She kept her baby a secret from the billionaire father, guarding her fragile world. But when the truth surfaced, it turned both their lives upside down. Some secrets are impossible to keep forever. The city of New York glistened under the glow of twilight, its energy pulsating through the hospital walls. Inside the maternity ward, Emma Carter sat in a quiet room, the only sound the occasional coo from the tiny bundle in her arms. Liam, her newborn son, was wrapped snugly in a soft blue blanket. His dark lashes rested against his chubby cheeks as he slept soundly. Emma's hand trembled as she gently brushed her fingertips across his smooth skin. This moment was supposed to be pure joy, yet her heart felt heavy with the weight of the decision she had made. Just months ago, her life had been unrecognizable. Emma had been a dedicated nurse at St. Mary's General, often losing herself in the chaos of saving lives and assisting patients. She had little time for romance until Alexander Pierce entered her world like a storm. With his piercing green eyes, tailored suits, and an air of authority that commanded every room, Alexander was the epitome of charm and success. To Emma, he had been more than just a billionaire mogul. He was the man who had made her believe in love again. Their whirlwind romance had begun unexpectedly. Alexander was a patient at the hospital, recovering from a minor accident. Unlike the cold persona he displayed to the world, he had shown Emma warmth and vulnerability, qualities she never expected from someone of his stature. Days turned into weeks as their connection deepened. Alexander swept her off her feet with grand gestures, a candlelit dinner at the rooftop of the Waldorf Astoria, private evenings on his yacht, and thoughtful moments where he listened to her dreams. Emma had fallen for him completely, but it wasn't until she found herself alone in his penthouse one evening that the truth unraveled. On his desk lay an invitation to his engagement party, an engagement she knew nothing about. Alexander Pierce, the man she had given her heart to, was set to marry Victoria Langford, heiress to a tech empire, in a union designed to solidify their family's business empires. That night, Emma had confronted him, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "How could you do this to me, Alexander? How could you lie?" Alexander's face had been a portrait of regret, but his words only deepened the wound. "Emma, it's complicated. I care about you, more than you know. But this marriage, it's not about love. It's business." "Business?" Emma's voice cracked as tears streamed down her cheeks. "I'm just a fling to you, aren't I? Someone to distract you until you go back to your real life." "You're not a fling," Alexander had insisted, reaching for her. But Emma stepped back, her walls rising higher than ever. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. This marriage was arranged years ago. I didn't have a choice. And I don't have a choice now either," Emma had whispered, her voice laced with finality. "Goodbye, Alexander." That night, Emma walked out of his life carrying more than just the scars of betrayal. She carried his child. Now, as she looked down at Liam's tiny face, the memory of that confrontation burned fresh in her mind. Her best friend, Mia, entered the room quietly, holding a bouquet of flowers. The sight of her friend brought Emma a sliver of comfort amidst the storm raging within her. "You look exhausted," Mia said, setting the flowers on the bedside table before sitting beside her. "Have you had any rest?" Emma shook her head, her eyes never leaving Liam. "How could I sleep? Every time I close my eyes, I think about what I'm doing. Hiding this from him, keeping Liam a secret. It's the right thing to do, isn't it?" Mia hesitated, her brows furrowing with concern. "Emma, I know why you're doing this, but are you sure you can live with this decision? Alexander has a right to know about his son." Emma's grip tightened on Liam's blanket. "He gave up that right the moment he lied to me. His world is built on lies, manipulation, and power. I won't let Liam be a pawn in his games." Mia sighed, placing a hand on Emma's shoulder. "I get it. I really do. But secrets like this don't stay buried forever. What happens when he finds out? What if Liam grows up and starts asking questions?" Emma's chest tightened at the thought. She had considered every scenario, but none of them seemed to have an easy solution. "I'll deal with that when the time comes," she said, her voice firm despite the cracks in her resolve. "Right now, all that matters is keeping Liam safe and giving him a life filled with love. Alexander's world is no place for a child." Mia nodded, though the worry in her eyes didn't fade. "Okay, Emma. Just know that I'm here for you, no matter what. You're not alone in this." As Mia left the room, Emma leaned back against the pillows. exhaustion creeping into her bones. She rocked Liam gently, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll protect you, my little one. No matter what it takes, I'll keep you safe from everything, including him." Outside the hospital, the city buzzed with life, oblivious to the storm brewing within Emma's heart. She had taken every precaution to ensure Alexander would never find out about Liam, leaving no trace of her pregnancy, cutting ties with mutual friends and moving to a modest apartment in Brooklyn. Yet deep down, a small voice nagged at her, whispering that secrets this big had a way of surfacing. Unbeknownst to Emma, Alexander Pierce was closer to discovering the truth than she could have imagined. Fate, with its twisted sense of timing, was already setting the stage for their paths to cross again, and when it did, the carefully built walls around Emma's heart would be tested like never before. 2 years had passed since Emma Carter left Alexander Pierce behind. Life had settled into a quiet rhythm, far removed from the glamorous chaos she once glimpsed during their whirlwind romance. Her days revolved around work as a nurse at a small Brooklyn clinic and caring for her son, Liam, whose innocent laughter was a balm for her wounded heart. It was a chilly afternoon when Emma found herself hurrying down a busy street, Liam in tow. The toddler's chubby hands clutched a bright red balloon, his face alight with joy as he toddled along beside her. Emma smiled, her own worries momentarily pushed aside by her son's contagious happiness. "We're almost there, buddy," she said, adjusting the bag slung over her shoulder. "Just a little further and we'll grab that hot chocolate I promised." Liam responded with a giggle, pointing excitedly at a window display of toy trains. Emma allowed herself a small laugh. Moments like these reminded her why she had chosen to leave Alexander's world behind. Here, with Liam, she felt grounded and free from the shadows of betrayal. As they approached a small cafe nestled on the corner of a bustling street, Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket. Balancing the bag and keeping an eye on Liam, she fished it out to see a message from Mia. "Mia, don't forget, dinner at my place tomorrow. Liam will love the cookies I baked. See you at 7. Emma typed a quick reply, promising to be there, before slipping the phone back into her pocket. She bent down to take Liam's hand. "Okay, sweetheart. Let's get that hot chocolate." The words froze on her lips as she glanced up and locked eyes with the last person she ever expected to see, Alexander Pierce. He stood just feet away, exiting the sleek black car parked at the curb. Dressed in a sharp overcoat, his tall frame exuded the same commanding presence she remembered all too well. His green eyes, once filled with warmth, now carried an edge of steel as they scanned the bustling street, until they landed on her. Time seemed to grind to a halt. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Panic surged through her veins and her grip tightened on Liam's hand. She turned sharply, pulling her son closer as she ducked into the cafe, her heart pounding like a drum. "Stay calm," she muttered under her breath, trying to sound reassuring even as fear clawed at her. She knew Alexander was perceptive, far too perceptive. If he had seen her, he would undoubtedly notice Liam. The boy's resemblance to his father was undeniable, from his striking green eyes to his dark hair. Emma's mind raced. She couldn't let this happen, not now. She had worked too hard to keep Liam out of Alexander's world, but fate had other plans. The bell above the cafe door chimed and Emma's stomach sank. She didn't need to look up to know who had just walked in. She felt his presence before she saw him, the air around her charged with an all-too-familiar intensity. "Emma?" Alexander's voice cut through the low hum of chatter in the cafe. It was deeper than she remembered, more commanding, and laced with an unmistakable note of surprise. Emma turned slowly, her face carefully composed. "Alexander," she said, her tone steady despite the storm brewing inside her. What are you doing here?" He studied her, his piercing gaze searching hers as though trying to piece together a puzzle. "I could ask you the same thing. I thought you left the city." "I did," she said, her voice tight. "I came back for work." Alexander's eyes flicked to Liam, who was now tugging at Emma's coat, oblivious to the tension in the room. "Is he yours?" Alexander asked, his voice soft but laced with curiosity. Emma's stomach twisted. She bent down, scooping Liam into her arms. "Yes, this is Liam," she said, her voice steady despite the way her heart raced. "We should go. It was nice seeing you, Alexander." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." Emma froze, her back to him. Every instinct screamed at her to keep walking, to put as much distance between them as possible, but something in his tone made her pause. "Is he mine?" Alexander's voice was quieter now, tinged with something that sounded like hope and fear all at once. Emma turned slowly, meeting his gaze. For a brief moment she considered lying, denying any connection between him and Liam. But as she looked into Alexander's eyes so much like her son's, she realized there was no point. He wouldn't believe her anyway. "Not here," she said quietly, glancing around the cafe. "This isn't the place for that conversation." Alexander's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Then let's go somewhere we can talk." Emma hesitated, glancing at Liam, who was now resting his head on her shoulder, his eyes beginning to droop. "Fine," she said finally, "but make it quick." Alexander stepped aside, gesturing for her to follow him outside. His car was still parked at the curb, and his driver opened the door as they approached. Emma's heart clenched as she climbed in, holding Liam close. She had spent years avoiding this moment, and now, in the blink of an eye, her carefully constructed world was on the verge of crumbling. As the car pulled away from the curb, Emma stole a glance at Alexander. His expression was unreadable, but she could feel the tension radiating from him. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The car ride was suffocating. Silence stretched between Emma and Alexander, heavy with unspoken words and a torrent of emotions. Liam, unaware of the storm brewing around him, had fallen asleep in Emma's arms, his tiny fingers curled around the edge of her sweater. Emma's eyes stayed fixed on her son, using his peaceful face as an anchor. She could feel Alexander's gaze on her, intense and unyielding, but she refused to look his way. The questions she knew he wanted to ask were written all over his face. The car finally pulled to a stop outside a sleek high-rise. Emma glanced out the window, her stomach twisting when she recognized the building. It was one of Alexander's properties, a luxurious penthouse she had visited only once during their brief time together. It was a world away from the modest apartment she and Liam called home. Alexander opened the door for her, his towering figure silhouetted against the city lights. "Come inside," he said, his voice low but firm. "We need to talk." Emma hesitated. Her instinct was to turn and leave, but there was no point in running now. The truth was out, or close enough to it, and she owed it to herself and Liam to face what was coming. She followed Alexander inside, clutching her sleeping son close as they stepped into the elevator. The ride to the penthouse felt endless, the quiet hum of the machinery amplifying the tension between them. When the doors finally opened, Emma stepped into the sprawling space, its modern elegance a stark reminder of the life Alexander lived. He gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing, her arms protectively around Liam. "Say what you need to say," she said, her voice steady but guarded. Alexander's gaze fell to Liam, who stirred slightly but didn't wake. "How old is he?" he asked, his voice soft. Emma hesitated before answering. 2.5. Something flickered in Alexander's eyes, a mix of realization and regret. He took a step closer, his hands clenching at his sides. "Emma, is he mine?" There it was, the question she had dreaded since the moment she discovered she was pregnant. Emma swallowed hard, her grip on Liam tightening. "Yes," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Liam is your son." Alexander's breath hitched, and for a moment he looked as if the ground beneath him had shifted. He ran a hand through his hair, his composed exterior fracturing as he processed her words. "You knew," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "You knew all this time and didn't tell me?" Emma's eyes flashed. "Don't you dare act like the victim here, Alexander," she shot back, her voice rising. "You're the one who betrayed me. You made it clear where I stood in your life. Disposable, forgettable. I wasn't going to subject my son to that." Alexander recoiled as if struck. "Emma, that's not fair. I didn't—" "You didn't what?" She cut him off, her voice trembling with emotion. "You didn't care enough to see what you were losing? You didn't think I'd notice the late nights, the whispered phone calls, the way you shut me out? You broke my heart, Alexander, and I couldn't risk you doing the same to him." Alexander's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. "I didn't know," he said quietly, his voice raw. "I didn't know how to be with someone like you, Emma. You made me feel things I didn't understand, and I panicked. I made mistakes, but I never stopped." He broke off, running a hand over his face. "I never stopped thinking about you." Emma's anger faltered, replaced by a deep ache in her chest. She wanted to believe him, but the wounds he had left behind were still raw. "Thinking about me doesn't change what you did," she said softly. and it doesn't change what Liam needs. He needs stability, love, and someone he can rely on. I wasn't sure you could be that person. Alexander stepped closer, his green eyes locked onto hers. And now? Do you still think that? Emma hesitated, her heart warring with her mind. She had seen glimpses of the man Alexander could be, the one who was kind and caring, who had once made her feel like she was the center of his world. But she had also seen the man who could destroy her with a single word. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I don't know if I can trust you again. The vulnerability in her words cut through Alexander like a blade. He glanced at Liam, who stirred in her arms, his small face scrunching up before settling back into sleep. I don't deserve your trust, Emma, he said finally. But I want to try. I want to be a part of his life, of both your lives. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to believe him, wanted to let him in, but the fear of being hurt again held her back. It's not that simple, Alexander, she said, her voice shaking. It's not just about us anymore. Everything I do is for him. I know, Alexander said, his voice steady. And I'll prove to you that I can be the father he deserves. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. Emma looked at him, searching his face for any sign of insincerity. What she saw instead was a man who seemed genuinely broken by the realization of what he had lost, and determined to make it right. For Liam's sake, she decided to give him the chance he was asking for. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding trust was a slow, painful process, and the wounds between them ran deep. As she nodded reluctantly, Alexander's expression softened with gratitude. It was a small step, but for now it was enough. I'll call you tomorrow, Emma said, her voice firm despite the uncertainty in her heart. We can figure out where to go from here. Alexander nodded, his gaze lingering on Liam as if memorizing every detail of his son's face. Thank you, Emma, he said quietly. I won't let you down this time. As Emma left the penthouse that night, Liam still sleeping peacefully in her arms, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. For better or worse, Alexander Pierce was back in their lives, and the road ahead was anything but clear. Emma stared at the ceiling of her modest apartment, her thoughts racing long after she had tucked Liam into bed. The encounter with Alexander replayed in her mind like a haunting melody. She had lived every day for the past 3 years believing she had done the right thing by keeping Liam a secret. Now, the man she had tried so hard to protect herself from was back, and he wanted to be part of their lives. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a message from Alexander. Thank you for letting me see him. I'll call tomorrow to discuss next steps. Please trust me, Emma. I won't hurt you again. Emma placed the phone back down without replying. It wasn't distrust that held her back. It was the overwhelming uncertainty of what their new dynamic might bring. She knew Liam deserved to know his father, but opening that door meant exposing herself to the possibility of heartbreak all over again. The following morning, Liam's laughter filled the small apartment as Emma prepared breakfast. He was perched at the kitchen table, playing with a set of colorful building blocks. His joy was infectious, and for a brief moment, Emma allowed herself to bask in the simplicity of the moment. But her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, she opened it to find Alexander standing there, a small, stuffed lion in hand. He looked both hopeful and nervous, a combination she hadn't seen on him before. Good morning, he said, offering her a tentative smile. I thought I'd stop by. I know we said we'd talk today, and I brought this for Liam. Emma hesitated, but Liam's curious voice broke the silence. Mommy, who's at the door? Alexander stepped inside, his gaze softening as it landed on Liam. The little boy looked up from his blocks, his wide eyes studying the tall stranger. Hi, Liam said shyly. Hi, buddy, Alexander replied, crouching down to meet him at eye level. He held out the stuffed lion. This is for you. I heard you like animals. Liam glanced at Emma, who nodded reassuringly. Then he took the toy, his face lighting up with delight. Thank you, he said, hugging it to his chest. Alexander's smile deepened, but it was tinged with emotion. You're welcome. Emma motioned for Alexander to follow her into the kitchen while Liam returned to his blocks. She poured him a cup of coffee, unsure of what to say. I wasn't expecting you, she admitted. I know, he said, his voice steady. But I wanted to start showing you, and him, that I'm serious about this. I don't want to just talk about being a father. I want to be one. Emma studied him carefully, her defenses still intact. It's not going to be easy, Alexander. You've missed a lot. Liam doesn't know you, and I'm not ready to fully trust you yet. I understand that, he said, his green eyes meeting hers with sincerity. But I'm willing to earn your trust, one day at a time. They spent the morning in a tentative dance of small talk and guarded interactions. Alexander watched Liam with fascination, marveling at his son's curiosity and energy. For his part, Liam seemed to warm up to Alexander quickly, showing him his favorite toys and chattering about his favorite shows. As the hours passed, Emma found herself softening slightly. Seeing Alexander with Liam was both heartwarming and bittersweet. It reminded her of the life they could have had if things had been different. But just as she began to feel a glimmer of hope, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from work. Emma worked part-time at a local community center, juggling her responsibilities as a single mother and her passion for helping others. I have to take this, she said, stepping into the other room. As she spoke with her supervisor, she heard Liam's laughter echoing from the living room. She peeked out to find Alexander on the floor, pretending to be a lion as Liam squealed in delight. It was a sight she hadn't expected to see, a glimpse of the man she had once loved, connecting with their son in a way she hadn't dared to imagine. When Emma returned, Alexander was helping Liam put together a puzzle. He looked up at her, his expression unreadable. Emma, he began, his tone serious. I know I have a long way to go, but I'd like to start by doing something for you. Emma arched a brow. What do you mean? I know how hard you've worked to provide for Liam, he said. Let me help. Whether it's school, daycare, or anything else he needs, I want to contribute. I don't want you to carry this burden alone anymore. Emma's instinct was to refuse. She had fought so hard to build a life for Liam without Alexander's help, and accepting his offer felt like surrendering a part of that independence. But as she looked at Liam, happily focused on his puzzle, she knew this wasn't about her pride. It was about giving her son the best possible future. I'll think about it, she said finally, her voice measured. Alexander nodded, respecting her hesitation. That's all I ask. As he prepared to leave, Alexander knelt down to say goodbye to Liam. I'll see you soon, buddy, he said, ruffling the boy's hair. Take care of that lion for me. I will, Liam said, clutching the toy tightly. When the door closed behind Alexander, Emma felt an odd mix of relief and unease. She knew the road ahead would be complicated, but for Liam's sake, she was willing to try. That night, as she tucked Liam into bed, he held the stuffed lion close and looked up at her with innocent curiosity. Mommy, who is that man? Is he a friend? Emma hesitated, her heart aching at the question. He's someone very special, she said softly. Someone who wants to get to know you better. As Liam drifted off to sleep, Emma sat by his side, her thoughts tangled in uncertainty. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. Alexander was determined to be part of their lives. And for better or worse, everything was about to change. Over the next several weeks, Alexander's presence in Emma and Liam's life became more frequent. Though hesitant at first, Emma couldn't deny the genuine effort Alexander was making. He visited regularly, never overstepping the boundaries she had set, but always showing up with enthusiasm to bond with Liam. Whether it was reading bedtime stories, helping with school projects, or simply playing catch in the park, Alexander was finding his way into their routine. Emma, however, remained guarded. While Alexander's intentions seemed sincere, her memories of betrayal lingered like shadows she couldn't escape. Each time she saw the joy on Liam's face when Alexander was around, it reignited her internal conflict. Could she really trust him again? One evening, Alexander invited Emma and Liam to dinner at his penthouse. Initially, Emma was reluctant. She wasn't ready to step back into the world of luxury and opulence Alexander inhabited, a world that once felt like a dream but had quickly turned into a nightmare. However, at Liam's insistence, he was thrilled at the idea of a fancy dinner. Emma reluctantly agreed. The penthouse was as grand as Emma remembered, but this time Alexander had made an effort to create a warm and welcoming atmosphere. The long dining table, usually adorned with extravagant centerpieces, was set with simple family-style dishes. Liam's eyes widened at the sight of it all, but it was the playroom Alexander had set up for him that truly captured his excitement. Is this all for me? Liam asked, his voice a mix of awe and disbelief as he explored the room filled with books, puzzles, and toys. Alexander knelt down beside him. Yes, it's for you. I wanted to make sure you felt at home here. Emma watched the exchange from the doorway, her arms crossed. She couldn't deny that Alexander was making an effort, but she also couldn't shake the unease that came with seeing him step so seamlessly into a role he had avoided for years. During dinner, Alexander tried to engage Emma in conversation, but her responses were measured and cautious. Liam, however, filled the silence with his animated chatter, recounting his latest adventures at school and his favorite cartoons. Alexander listened intently, laughing at Liam's jokes and encouraging his stories. After dinner, while Liam played in his new room, Alexander and Emma sat on the balcony overlooking the city. The evening air was crisp, and the city lights twinkled like stars below. I know you're still skeptical, Alexander said, breaking the silence, and I don't blame you. I've made mistakes, big ones, but I'm trying to be better, for Liam and for you. Emma sighed, her gaze fixed on the skyline. It's not just about me, Alexander. You broke my trust, and it's going to take more than a few visits and grand gestures to fix that. I understand, he said quietly, but I'm not giving up. I want to be a part of his life, and I want to make things right with you. Emma turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Why now? Why after all this time? Alexander hesitated, his usual confidence faltering. Because I was a coward, he admitted. I let fear and ambition drive me away from what really mattered. Losing you was my biggest regret, and when I found out about Liam, I knew I couldn't keep running. His words hung in the air, raw and unguarded. For the first time, Emma saw a vulnerability in Alexander that she hadn't seen before. It was both unsettling and disarming. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away, he continued, but I'm asking for a chance to prove that I've changed. Emma studied him for a moment before responding. This isn't about you and me, Alexander. It's about Liam. If you're serious about being a part of his life, then you need to show it every day, not just when it's convenient. I will, he said, his voice resolute. I promise. The sound of Liam's laughter drifted through the balcony doors, breaking the tension. Emma turned to look inside, where Liam was building a tower of blocks, his face lit with joy. For his sake, Emma said softly, I hope you mean it. The weeks that followed were a delicate balancing act. Alexander continued to show up for Liam, whether it was attending parent-teacher meetings or helping with bedtime routines. Slowly but surely, Emma began to see glimpses of the man she had once loved, the one who was thoughtful, kind, and unwavering in his determination. One evening, as they sat together after putting Liam to bed, Alexander handed Emma a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, something Emma hadn't expected from the polished businessman. I wrote this a while ago, he explained. I didn't know if I'd ever get the chance to give it to you, but now feels like the right time. Emma unfolded the letter and began to read. It was a heartfelt apology, recounting the pain he had caused her and the regret that had consumed him since. He spoke of his desire to be better, not just for Liam, but for her as well. As she finished reading, Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. She wasn't ready to forgive Alexander completely, but for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that he was genuinely trying to change. Thank you, she said quietly, her voice tinged with emotion. Alexander reached for her hand, his touch tentative. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the time I've lost. Emma didn't pull away, but she didn't move closer either. One step at a time, she said, her tone firm, but not unkind. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like there was a possibility of healing, not just for her, but for their family. Emma knew she needed clarity. Alexander's gestures and heartfelt apologies were slowly softening her resolve, but the scars of betrayal were deeply ingrained. One rainy afternoon, as Liam played in the living room with his toy cars, Emma decided it was time to confront the questions that had haunted her for years. Alexander, she began as he sat across from her at the kitchen table, if we're going to move forward for Liam's sake, I need to understand why. Why did you leave? Why did you push me away when I needed you the most? Alexander put down his coffee cup, his expression somber. You deserve the truth, Emma, he said, his voice low but steady. And I owe you that much. He took a deep breath before continuing. When we found out you were pregnant, I was thrilled, but I was also terrified. My company was on the verge of a major acquisition. and I convinced myself that providing for our future meant prioritizing work above everything else. I thought if I could secure the deal, I'd have all the time in the world to focus on us. Emma folded her arms, her expression guarded. That doesn't explain why you shut me out. I was selfish, Alexander admitted. I didn't know how to handle the pressure, and instead of leaning on you, I buried myself in work. When the acquisition fell through, I felt like a failure. I didn't want you to see me that way, so I distanced myself. And then, I made the mistake of listening to people who told me I wasn't ready to be a father, that I wasn't cut out for family life. Emma's eyes narrowed. So you left me alone to deal with it? To raise Liam without even knowing he existed? I know it was wrong, Alexander said, his voice breaking slightly. I know I abandoned you when you needed me the most, but I thought I was doing you a favor by staying away, by not dragging you down with me. Emma shook her head, anger and sadness warring within her. You didn't just leave me, Alexander. You left our son. Do you have any idea what that was like? To look at Liam every day and see the father who chose to walk away? I do now, Alexander said, his gaze unwavering, and it's something I'll regret for the rest of my life. But Emma, I'm here now. I can't change the past, but I can promise you that I'll never make that mistake again. Emma looked away, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee mug. Actions speak louder than words, she said finally. If you want to be in Liam's life, you need to prove it, not just to me, but to him. Alexander nodded. I will, every day, for as long as it takes. As days turned into weeks, Alexander made good on his promise. He accompanied Emma and Liam to doctor's appointments, school events, and even mundane errands, fully immersing himself in the life he had missed. His dedication didn't go unnoticed by Liam, who began to look forward to their time together. One evening, as Emma prepared dinner, she overheard a conversation between Alexander and Liam that stopped her in her tracks. Dad, why didn't you come to my birthday parties before? Liam asked innocently, his small hands fiddling with a puzzle piece. Alexander knelt down to Liam's level, his face a mask of remorse. I wasn't the dad I should have been back then, he admitted. But I promise you, I'll be there for every birthday, every soccer game, and every big moment from now on. Liam tilted his head thoughtfully. Pinky promise. Alexander extended his hand, hooking his pinky with Liam's. Pinky promise. Watching the scene unfold, Emma felt a pang of emotion she couldn't quite name. It was bittersweet, watching Alexander step into the role of a father so effortlessly after years of absence. Part of her wanted to cling to the anger and pain, but another part, a quieter part, yearned to let go and move forward. Later that night, after Liam was tucked into bed, Emma found Alexander sitting on the porch, staring out at the star-filled sky. He's warming up to you, she said, leaning against the doorframe. Alexander turned to her with a small smile. I can't believe how incredible he is. You've done an amazing job raising him. Emma crossed her arms, a hint of skepticism in her expression. It wasn't easy, and I had help from my friends. But yes, he's pretty great. They sat in silence for a moment before Alexander spoke again. Emma, I've been thinking about something. I want to set up a trust fund for Liam, something that will secure his future no matter what. Emma raised an eyebrow. That's generous, but money isn't what he needs from you, Alexander. He needs your time, your presence, and he'll have it, Alexander said firmly. The trust fund isn't to replace that. It's just something I can do to make sure he has every opportunity in life. Emma studied him for a moment before nodding. Okay, but make sure it's for him, not to ease your guilt. Alexander's smile was rueful. Fair enough. As their co-parenting dynamic evolved, Emma began to see glimpses of the man she had once loved, the man who was kind, thoughtful, and fiercely determined. She wasn't ready to forgive him completely, but for the first time, she allowed herself to entertain the possibility of a future where they could be a family. But just as things seemed to be settling into a rhythm, an unexpected letter arrived in the mail, one addressed to Emma, but containing a stark reminder of the past she had tried to move on from. It was a legal document, and the sender was someone from Alexander's past, a person with their own agenda that threatened to upend the fragile balance they had worked so hard to achieve. Emma stared at the envelope in her hands, the return address unfamiliar, but the sender unmistakable. It was from one of Alexander's former business partners, a name she remembered hearing during the fallout of his company's turbulent years. Her heart sank as she opened it, her fingers trembling. The document inside was a legal notice stating that the partner, Nathan Caldwell, was pursuing a claim against Alexander. The accusations were vague but damaging, suggesting misconduct that could implicate him in corporate fraud. Attached was a note. "Emma, I thought you should know the man you're trusting with your son's future isn't as innocent as he seems. I have proof of his involvement in illegal activities. Let me know if you'd like to see it." Beneath the text was a phone number. Emma's mind raced, torn between skepticism and concern. She had seen Alexander's efforts to rebuild trust, but this was a serious allegation. If there was any truth to it, she couldn't afford to ignore it, not when Liam's well-being was at stake. When Alexander returned that evening, Emma confronted him immediately. "Alexander," she began, holding up the letter, "I received this today. Care to explain why someone would accuse you of fraud?" Alexander's expression hardened as he read the document. "Nathan Caldwell," he said, his voice laced with contempt. "I should have known he'd try something like this." "What does he want?" Emma pressed. "And is there any truth to what he's saying?" Alexander met her gaze, his tone resolute. "None. Nathan and I were partners during the early days of my company, but when I discovered he was embezzling funds, I cut ties with him. I reported him to the authorities, and he's held a grudge ever since." Emma narrowed her eyes. "So you're saying this is just revenge?" "Exactly," Alexander replied. "Nathan has been trying to drag my name through the mud for years, but he doesn't have anything concrete. It's all empty threats." Emma crossed her arms, still skeptical. "And what if he does have something? What if you're not telling me the whole truth?" Alexander sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I get why you doubt me, Emma. I haven't exactly given you a reason to trust me, but I swear to you, I'm not the man Nathan is painting me to be." Despite Alexander's reassurances, Emma couldn't shake her unease. That night, while Liam slept soundly, she found herself searching through old articles and reports about Alexander's company. Most of what she uncovered aligned with his story, but there were gaps, moments in his career shrouded in mystery. Her phone buzzed, startling her. It was a text from Nathan Caldwell. "I see you've read my letter. If you want the proof, meet me at Café Renault tomorrow at 3 p.m. Bring an open mind." Emma debated whether to respond. Her instincts told her to ignore it, but her curiosity, and her responsibility as a mother, compelled her to consider the meeting. If there was even a sliver of truth to Nathan's claims, she needed to know. The next afternoon, Emma sat across from Nathan in the dimly lit cafe. He was a sharp-dressed man with an air of smug confidence that set her on edge. "Emma," he greeted her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for coming. I'm here to get answers," she said firmly. "Not to play games." Nathan chuckled, pulling out a folder and sliding it across the table. "Fair enough. This is everything you need to see." Emma opened the folder, her heart sinking as she scanned the documents. They included bank statements, emails, and transaction records that painted a damning picture of Alexander's involvement in questionable dealings. But something about the documents felt off, disjointed, as if pieces were missing. "What exactly am I looking at?" she asked, her voice steady despite her growing unease. "Proof that Alexander isn't as clean as he claims," Nathan said smoothly. "You see, he didn't just cut ties with me. He buried me, using the same tactics he's accused me of. He's a hypocrite, Emma." Emma closed the folder, her expression unreadable. "And what do you get out of this, Nathan? Why are you so eager to share this with me?" Nathan leaned back, his smile widening. "Let's just say I have an interest in seeing Alexander's empire crumble. But I thought you, as someone who seems invested in the truth, deserved to know." Emma left the cafe with the folder in hand, her mind a whirlwind of doubt and suspicion. When she returned home, she found Alexander waiting for her. "Where were you?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "Meeting someone who claims to know the truth about you," Emma replied, tossing the folder onto the coffee table. "Nathan Caldwell." Alexander's jaw tightened. He opened the folder, his eyes scanning the contents before looking back at Emma. "This is all fabricated," he said. "Nathan's trying to manipulate you, Emma. He's desperate." Emma held his gaze, searching for any sign of deception. "If it's fabricated, then prove it. Show me the truth." That night, Alexander worked tirelessly to dismantle the evidence Nathan had presented. With Emma by his side, he walked her through each document, highlighting inconsistencies and pointing out how data had been altered. "This email," he said, gesturing to one printout, was sent months after I ended my partnership with Nathan. And this transaction? It never happened. I've already reported it to the authorities. By the time he finished, Emma's skepticism had waned. The pieces fell into place, and Nathan's claims unraveled under scrutiny. I didn't want to involve you in this, Alexander said, his voice heavy with regret. But I should have been honest from the start. Nathan's been trying to sabotage me for years, and I won't let him drag you or Liam into his mess. Emma nodded, the tension between them easing. Thank you for clearing this up, she said. But Alexander, if we're going to rebuild trust, you need to be upfront with me. About everything. I will, he promised, no more secrets. As they sat together in the quiet of the living room, Emma felt a renewed sense of hope. Their path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, she believed they could navigate it together. The days following Nathan Caldwell's failed attempt at manipulation were fraught with a delicate mixture of relief and caution. Alexander had proven his innocence, but the ordeal left Emma more vigilant than ever. She couldn't ignore how easily doubt had crept in, nor could she forget the stakes involved, for Liam and for their fragile attempt at rebuilding trust. As Emma sat in the garden watching Liam play with his toy trucks, Alexander approached with a cup of tea. He placed it on the small table beside her and took a seat, his expression contemplative. You've been quiet, he remarked, breaking the silence. Emma glanced at him, her gaze soft but guarded. I've had a lot on my mind. I can imagine, Alexander replied. He hesitated before continuing. I know Nathan's accusations shook you, and I don't blame you for doubting me, but I want you to know. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust. Emma studied him for a moment, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her teacup. It's not just about trust, Alexander. It's about transparency. If we're going to move forward, I need to know everything, no more surprises. Alexander nodded, his expression resolute. Agreed. Ask me anything, and I'll give you the truth. Emma's eyes met his, a flicker of vulnerability in her gaze. Why didn't you look for us sooner? After everything fell apart, why did you wait so long? The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken pain. Alexander leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. I tried, Emma, he said, his voice low but earnest. After you left, I searched everywhere. I hired investigators, checked every lead, but it was like you vanished. Eventually, I told myself you didn't want to be found, and I thought staying away was what you wanted. Emma's chest tightened at his words. She had wanted to disappear, to protect Liam from the chaos Alexander's world represented. But hearing how he'd searched for them stirred a mix of guilt and longing she hadn't anticipated. I was scared, she admitted softly. Scared of what your world would do to Liam, and scared of what it had already done to us. Leaving felt like the only way to protect him. Alexander reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. I understand why you left, but I want to prove to you that things can be different, that I can be different. Before Emma could respond, Liam's laughter broke the tension. He ran toward them, holding up a small flower he'd plucked from the garden. For Mommy, he announced, his face beaming with pride. Emma took the flower, her heart swelling. Thank you, sweetheart. And for Daddy, Liam added, holding out another flower to Alexander. Alexander accepted it, his expression softening as he looked at his son. Thank you, buddy. It's perfect. As Liam returned to his play, Emma watched Alexander, a flicker of hope igniting within her. Perhaps against all odds, there was a way forward for them, a way to build something new from the ashes of their past. That evening, Alexander suggested they have dinner together, just the three of them. He wanted to create a sense of normalcy for Liam and show Emma that he was committed to being a present and dependable father. Emma hesitated but agreed, deciding to meet him halfway. They set the table together, with Liam eagerly helping to place the silverware, though his placement was far from precise. Perfect, Alexander said, smiling as Liam proudly surveyed his work. You're a natural, buddy. The meal was simple but filled with laughter, as Liam regaled them with stories about his imaginary adventures. For a brief moment it felt like they were a family, a glimpse of the life they might have had if things had gone differently. After Liam went to bed, Alexander and Emma lingered in the living room, the weight of the day's events settling over them. Alexander poured them each a glass of wine, handing one to Emma before sitting beside her. I know this won't be easy, he said, his voice steady, but I'm willing to do the work, for Liam, for us. Emma looked at him, her heart torn between caution and the undeniable connection they still shared. "It won't be easy," she agreed, "but I'm willing to try." As they sat together in the quiet, the fragile alliance between them began to solidify. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time they were facing it together, and in that moment, it was enough. As the fragile bond between Alexander and Emma began to take shape, the shadow of their past lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon. While they worked toward rebuilding trust, old wounds and unresolved emotions occasionally surfaced, threatening to undo their progress. One evening, Emma received a package at her doorstep. Inside was a file containing photographs, emails, and documents, evidence of Alexander's life during the years they'd been apart. The contents were unsettling. Pictures of him at lavish events, always accompanied by glamorous women. Emails discussing business deals that seemed morally questionable. It was a stark reminder of the life she had chosen to leave behind. Her heart sank as she flipped through the pages. The man she was beginning to trust again seemed eerily similar to the one she had run from. "Who sent this?" she muttered under her breath, her hands trembling as she sifted through the evidence. There was no note, no explanation, only the insinuation that Alexander's intentions were anything but genuine. When Alexander returned that evening, Emma confronted him. She held up the file, her eyes blazing with hurt and anger. "Do you care to explain this?" she demanded. Alexander's brows furrowed as he took the file from her and examined its contents. His jaw clenched, and his face darkened. "This is a setup," he said firmly. "Someone's trying to sabotage us." "Convenient excuse," Emma replied, crossing her arms. "How do I know this isn't who you really are? That you haven't just been playing the role of the remorseful father to get what you want?" Alexander stepped closer, his expression resolute. "Emma, look at me. Do you think I'd go through all of this just to deceive you? Yes, I've made mistakes, and yes, my life wasn't perfect while you were gone, but I've changed, and I'm here because I want to be a father to Liam, and because I still care about you." Emma's defenses wavered, but her skepticism remained. "How can I trust you, Alexander? How can I know this isn't just another game?" Alexander took a deep breath, his hands gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. "I'll prove it. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. You want access to my accounts, my emails, my business dealings? It's all yours. Just tell me what I need to do to make this right." Emma was taken aback by his sincerity, but she knew actions would speak louder than words. "I want transparency, Alexander. If there's anything you've been hiding, now's the time to tell me." Alexander nodded, his gaze steady. "I swear to you I have nothing to hide. And whoever sent this," he gestured to the file, "they're trying to tear us apart, but I won't let them." Determined to uncover the truth, Alexander began investigating the origins of the file. With the help of his trusted assistant, Laura, he traced the package back to Nathan Caldwell, the same man who had tried to drive a wedge between them before. "This man doesn't know when to quit," Alexander muttered, his hands tightening into fists. "He's not just after me. He's trying to destroy my family." Laura looked at him, her expression grim. "What's the plan, sir?" "I'm not letting him get away with this," Alexander said, "but I need to be smart about it. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about Emma and Liam." Meanwhile, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Strange cars parked near the house, unknown numbers calling her phone. It all pointed to someone monitoring her every move. She shared her concerns with Alexander, who immediately increased security around the property. One evening, as Emma tucked Liam into bed, she noticed a figure lurking near the garden. Her heart pounded as she grabbed her phone and called Alexander. "There's someone outside," she whispered. "I'm on my way," Alexander replied, his voice sharp with urgency. By the time Alexander arrived, the figure was gone, but the unsettling incident reinforced the reality of the danger they faced. Alexander pulled Emma into a protective embrace, his determination stronger than ever. "We'll get through this," he promised. "I won't let anyone hurt you or Liam." Emma leaned into his embrace, her walls beginning to crack. Despite her lingering doubts, she felt safer with Alexander by her side. Over the next few weeks, Alexander worked tirelessly to neutralize the threat Nathan posed. He gathered evidence of Nathan's schemes and used his connections to expose the man's corrupt dealings. As Nathan's empire crumbled, Alexander ensured he had no means of striking back. When the dust settled, Alexander came to Emma with a proposal, not of marriage, but of unity. "I want us to be a team," he said, his voice steady. "No more secrets, no more lies. I want to rebuild what we lost. Not just for Liam, but for us." Emma looked at him, her heart conflicted but hopeful. "It's not going to be easy, Alexander." "I know," he replied, "but I'm willing to fight for it, for you." As Emma took his hand, a tentative smile played on her lips. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. For Liam, for their family, and for the possibility of a future together. Months later, life began to settle into a rhythm for Emma, Alexander, and Liam. The echoes of their turbulent past slowly faded, replaced by a cautious but growing sense of stability. Their home was no longer just a house but a sanctuary where trust was rebuilt, one day at a time. Alexander had transformed, not just as a father but as a man. His relentless drive in business was now tempered by a genuine desire to be present for his family. Every morning he made breakfast with Liam, teaching him how to flip pancakes and sneak in extra chocolate chips when Emma wasn't looking. In those quiet moments, Emma saw glimpses of the man she had once fallen in love with. Emma, too, was rediscovering herself. She resumed her career as a designer, her creativity blossoming in ways she hadn't expected. Her pieces began to reflect her journey, patterns that spoke of resilience, colors that celebrated hope, and designs that embodied freedom. With Alexander's support, she opened her own boutique, and it quickly became the talk of the town. One crisp autumn morning, Alexander invited Emma and Liam to a picnic in the park. It was a simple outing, sandwiches, a blanket, and Liam's favorite kite. As they lay under the clear blue sky, Emma felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. "Look, Mommy," Liam shouted, his kite soaring high. "It's flying so high just like you said it would." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You're amazing, sweetheart." Alexander watched them from the blanket, his gaze soft. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small velvet box. His fingers trembled as he held it, unsure if this was the right moment. But then Emma turned to him, her eyes shining with happiness, and he knew it was. "Emma," he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "These past months have shown me what I almost lost. You and Liam are my world, and I never want to take that for granted again." Emma's breath hitched as he opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "I'm not asking for forgiveness because I know that's something I have to earn every day, but I am asking for a chance to be the man you and Liam deserve." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she looked at him. She saw no trace of the man who had once betrayed her, only someone who was trying, truly trying, to make amends. "Alexander," she said softly, her voice breaking, "you've already started to become that man." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they sealed the moment with a kiss. Liam, oblivious to the significance of what had just happened, ran over to them with his kite trailing behind him. "Daddy, Mommy, I made it fly so high," he exclaimed, throwing himself into their arms. The three of them laughed, tangled in an embrace that felt like a promise of love, redemption, and a future worth fighting for. Years later, as they stood on the balcony of their seaside home, watching Liam play with their new dog, Emma leaned into Alexander's side. "Did you ever think we'd get here?" she asked, her voice quiet. Alexander wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "I didn't, but now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Emma smiled, her heart full. Their journey had been anything but easy, but it had brought them to a place where love and trust could finally flourish. And as the waves crashed against the shore, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family. Did this story touch your heart? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know your favorite part. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more emotional tales that inspire and captivate. Inspire and captivate.